All right. So today I'm gonna present some of this work that I just recently presented at the Summer Institute on Computational Social Science at Rutgers. So I kind of created this presentation from scratch. It's a new presentation that puts together three of our recent works in this space. And so I want to just give you a sense of like ongoing work in this space and also just use this as a way to think more about what can be done with data like this and also get a sense of like if there's any feedback or if anyone is interested or have any suggestions or questions or comments and things like that to influence the way I've been thinking about it. So I'm really thinking a lot about this space. So I think there is definitely a huge gap in the way people think about how others use AI, and a lot of the data that comes here is all self-reported, like how people use AI mostly, and there is usually people underappreciate certain aspect, underreport certain aspect, and overreport certain aspects. So, for instance, if you're using chatbots as romantic partners, for instance, people will not report that and things like that. Okay, so this is data-based evidence, and it covers three papers. Uh, so, by the way, all three papers are on my website. If you want, you can check this out. Uh, okay. Mm. Yeah, this is the motivation. Like, what are people actually doing with ChatGPT? So yeah, obviously, ChatGPT is one of the most important technologies of our lifetimes. Hundreds of millions of people are using it every week, but we don't have systematic public evidence, right? Like, and a lot of the evidence that we have comes from either the US or English speaking or Western context, and it does not really look at the sort of global South context. And so I really want to take a look at that, like with data from that we collected, my group connected from India, Brazil, Nigeria, and Pakistan. There is already some evidence on this, especially with this type of data, like usage log based analysis. And one of the things that is missing is there are two types of data in this space. And one of the things that is missing is now from these platform report data, things like OpenAI signals, Anthropic Economic Index, or Microsoft Copilot reports. They do provide some reports, which is good. Like I think the platforms have a lot of this data, and they should be doing more of this work. And they're not doing that much amount of work. So I think it's good that they're putting out these reports, but they have some limitations. One is this sort of high level, it's a high level aggregated summary, and we don't have a lot of control over what they're releasing and what type of analysis they do. So most of these are like research, blog posts kind of thing, which are not, I mean, they are helpful, definitely very, very helpful, but not, you cannot go beyond what they report, or you cannot rerun a classifier, for instance, or ask for how it looks for like in a specific country and things like that. Then there are these other corporas. The main one that exists is called Wild Chat, which is a large conversational chat data set. It has over 1 million conversations, fully public. This is basically the way they got this is they they gave free access to people to some of the premium models for like especially in GPT-4 time. And they said, okay, you can use it for whatever you want, but you're giving us your data for research. And that's how they got this. And one thing we show in our analysis is that these kinds of data sets are overrepresenting programming. So, in the early days, most of the uh, um, usage was by coders, programmers, the tech types. So it overrepresents like more like 4 to 7 times overrepresenting programming. And there's also other smaller data sets that have been released or work that has been released on data collected from people, like normal people, but it's mostly focusing on EU and UK, US, and things like that. I think there's no work similar to what we are going to present, which is full conversation logs from these four global South countries, along with the demographics of people. So this is one slide that I have in general, like, overall for people who are interested in studying anything digital related, digital impacts and things like that. Like, I think the global south, if nothing, like, if you, I mean, there's the altruistic case of, okay, this is an important region, there's not, there's important problems there, all of that kind of thing, right? But also a selfish reason, which is that it's a not so crowded space. Like, so, if you're looking for problems and like interesting solutions which have impact, like, I think being in this space and developing expertise is a good thing. Like, I think there is a lot of scope for in studying various kinds of problems and things like that. Like, I think some of these weird Western educated, industrialized, I don't know, is something, and developed countries are overstudied. Like, to a certain extent, there's a saturation, and so you can do the whatever 20th paper on how American college kids are using ChatGPT for politics, or you can try to do something like this, right? Like, so again, I mean, it sounds a bit insulting, maybe, probably, hopefully not. Like, but I mean, I think a lot about it, and I think overall, like, it's a good space to be in. Like, there's value in there, and there's a lot of interesting things there, and the downstream effects that come from it are also very interesting, like, which are like contributions to some things other than your research. Okay, so today I'm going to present these three papers. So we have three lines of work that, two of them are already, we have a draft, and one of them we're working on a draft pretty soon. So the first is to study the how people use ChatGPT. So, just studying the usage. So we have data donated from these four countries: India, Brazil, Pakistan, Nigeria. We look at those logs and look at like how are people using ChatGPT. The second is looking at the privacy aspect. So, what are private things that people are disclosing to ChatGPT based on these logs? And can we use these logs to actually infer people's demographics? So, we have the ground truth demographics. Can we just use the log information to predict their demographics? And this has a lot of connections to advertising, for instance. People, if I'm advertising and I can target ads very well because I know your gender or age group or religion or country and things like that, which is a very good thing. I mean, a very bad thing, but good thing for the countries, the companies. The third thing is this sort of cross-platform study. So, looking at and comparing how the use of ChatGPT compares to the use of Google search and YouTube and things like that. Like, so is ChatGPT replacing what Google used to do? Is how is ChatGPT different from these other information seeking platforms and things like that? So, these three studies I'm going to present. Like, again, all of these, you can reach out to me for a draft of these papers, or they're on my website, to two of them. One of them will release soon. Okay, so the data set we are going to cover is on from these four countries. These are the number of users, so it's around 1,250 users, and most of them come from India, 50% of them around, and the rest is from these three countries. Hundreds of thousands of conversations. So a conversation is a bunch of back and forth. So if you're in ChatGPT, you have the side bar where you can open a new chat and then you go back and forth, back and forth. So each conversation could be like 5 to 10 messages, and then overall there's 200,000 messages, 200,000 conversations. So these are sets of messages. The number of back and forth messages is around 1.5 million or so in our sample. And yeah, per user, we have like a decent enough number of conversations. So it's around 60 conversations per user, median. And the sampling is around male dominated in India and in Pakistan, which is again it's harder to reach these kinds of female populations in these countries. There's other studies which also show that, and this population who've donated or participated in our study are on the younger side. So we got this data from with consent from people who use this platform called clickworker.com. This is an online platform where you can sign up for gig work, like things like Prolific. Like Prolific, we're all using. in the US, but this is like prolific for the global south. Like there are lots of countries in the global south that are represented here. Why these four countries? It's a super, super convenient sample. Like just, I was trying to check out like, what kind of data we can get from these platforms. And this is what we were able to get. So the way it works is you go to, the task is just, go, you have to be an proficient ChatGPT user, proficient defined as at least 1 month of ChatGPT use. Um, and then you go and click on export my data. You export your data, you upload it to our portal. And before we export it, we run some sort of client-side classification for removing PII, like obvious PII, things like your name, your email, your phone number, your other very obvious PII. But other than that, like we are not doing anything. But there's that. But the users go through a detailed informed consent where we are telling them that this is in exchange for you being provided this money and all of that stuff. So there's a thorough and good informed consent. There's also ethics protocol that we file at Rutgers. And this spans over 3 years of data. So December 2022, when ChatGPT was released, to February 2026, when the data was collected. So there's a huge coverage of models and different years of data and different usage levels. So some users start and stop, but most users who start keep being active. Okay, so there's a lot of caveats in terms of sampling. This is a very convenient sample. It's anyway, no way representative. We do not try to be representative. It's what we could get from these platforms. And these are preliminary findings. Obviously, you cannot deduce a lot from a sample that is 80% men in India, where 80% or 50% are women, right? Like so obviously, anything that we say is should be taken with this caveat that this is a bias sample. And there is also a lot of like self-selection. Like this is a task which involves donation of private data. So there's a huge self-selection in there. Obviously, if you're privacy conscious or if you don't know how to use technology, like even if you use ChatGPT, going into these other settings, downloading the zip file, going to your email to get that zip file, then uploading it, like is a technically savvy task. And so that's why also probably our sample skews towards the younger side. And so, yeah, if there are any ideas or interest or for analysis or extensions or funding, yeah, that's like I'm very interested. So yeah, please do reach out. Okay, so what do people do with ChatGPT? Uh, so let's first look at just the overall analysis thinking. So there's three types of analysis. The first is looking at high-level topics. So what are the topics that people use? So we have some sort of classification for different topic usage. Then we have the task purpose, like are they using it for work? Are they using it for coursework? Are they using it for personal use and things like that? This is from the Anthropic Economic Index. Then we have the intent classification. So what is their intent behind this sort of use of ChatGPT? Are they asking for some information? Are they asking it to do something like, generate an image, do some analysis, things like that? Or are they expressing something like, are they saying, I love this person and like, what do I do? Or, things like that. So it's having a personal conversation and a lot of like raw data metadata we have like that. I'll basically show you very a small amount of metadata analysis, like things like the models used, when they're used, but we have a bunch of other things like the tools that they use. Did they use a web search? Did they use a image generation tool? Did they have a free subscription or a pro subscription, things like that. So okay, let me get started. So the first result is like very high level, but somewhat like funny, interesting result. Like this is just activity by day across the four countries, and we see that, for instance, Brazil is like super active during much more during the weekdays and very little during the weekends compared to let's say India and Pakistan. For instance, people have like Monday, Tuesday is the better activity, but then it declines during the weekend. But still, like 13% of the people are still using it. But in Brazil, it goes down a lot. Also, Brazil is like very active during the night much more, and they have these sorts of two peaks where they this sort of dip during the afternoon. I don't know if people go to the beach and just sleep or something like that, but you see this, and it's also later in the day compared to these other countries. So again, okay, what do these plots show us about AI usage? Nothing, but it's just interesting. But we have data like this. Another interesting result is the model usage. So we have, like I said, data from which models people use to answer what question. And so you can then use that to generate things like this. Uh, where we can see, okay, Text DaVinci is GPT 3.5, so that's where it started. Then in February, March 2024, like we switched to GPT-4. We see these different models being used. One of the things that is important to note from this plot is that the switch is very quick. Like, so, it drops off very quickly and the new model is incorporated. And this is because of the default. So people usually never change those defaults. At least now we don't have a lot of option, but back in the day you could go and change this more, use this model GPT 4.1, things like that. Like, but yeah, so if the defaults are changed, like most of the people just use the default. I mean, this is where, like, I think there was some 4.5, 4.1 kind of models. Those are not included in this plot, but that's why here we see some drop off in GPT-4o, but almost all of them use GPT-4o. And then GPT-5 launched and everyone started using GPT-5, then GPT 5.1, 5.2, and so on. So here we see a mix of models. But yeah, you can clearly see the sort of once they change it, like it's very quick to adopt, meaning they're serving with that model almost immediately. Okay, let's now first look at the topic distribution. This is based on the taxonomy from the OpenAI paper. This is Chatterjee et al. They have a topic classification of how people use ChatGPT. So in our case, we just applied their classification for our data set. And this is what we find. Like, so most of the prominent types of information consumption or like use of ChatGPT is for practical guidance and seeking information. That makes up like 50% of the conversation. Writing is very important, like 21.5%. This self-expression, which is like personal conversations, romantic partners, things like that, they are around 3.9%, which is very, very small. Like, and I think even in the OpenAI data, this is what we found. This is the OpenAI paper, which is global data compared to ours, which is for these four countries. So you can see some, I mean, it's directionally similar, right? Like practical guidance is the highest, seeking information, writing, people still do use it for that. Um, uh, Self-expression again is 5% in OpenAI data, 3.9 in our data. So it's directionally they're very similar. But the main thing is I was about to say something. Uh, yeah, I mean, these things don't necessarily give you the like detailed information on what people are using it for. Okay, what is practical guidance, right? Like it could mean many, many things, many different things. So that is very important. So they also have this sort of one level deeper of categorization, looking at things like specific information, how to advise, tutoring, teaching, personal writing, communication, things like that. So writing, for instance, you can split into personal writing, editing, provided text, and things like that. So here, okay, there's a bunch of numbers, so that we don't really need to dig deeper. But what I wanted to show was this sort of heterogeneity across countries. So, for instance, there is things like translation, for instance, mostly, it's very dominant in Pakistan somehow. Then, for instance, asking for specific information is more in India and like Nigeria. Personal writing communication is very well represented in Nigeria and so on. So I also have this sort of dashboard which I created using Claude, like which is I mean, it shows obviously, but this is a very interesting one-shot dashboard, like where we have this data, and I tell Claude, okay, do this kind of analysis. So I give it a plan for like, okay, this is the type of data we have. You can create these sorts of distributions, time series, matrices and so on. So you can like now say, okay, in India, females of 18 to 24, how many do we have? Like, so we have only 58 users. What are they using it for, right? Like, so for them, practical guidance is 35%. Like, so you can also say, I want to compare this with all users. So all users was 29%, as I showed here, right? Like 29%. But in this case, compared to that, females are using, females in India, young females are using it for this and so on, right? Like, so it's a very nice interactive dashboard that you can do to compare a lot of things. You can do a lot of these trends over time kind of plots and a bunch of stuff like, and a lot of this was just a single shot, like, and then I had to do a bunch of small edits, but again, it's unbelievably amazing. And most of it, like, nobody will use it, but even for me to just quickly get a sense of like, okay, this is how people are using it. If you do this sort of cross tab, like what do we get, all of this stuff, like you can really easily do with these kinds of personalized dashboards. I may use it just for like 3 or 4 times, but the cost of generating that was so small that it's very good and helpful for me. And if people use it, that's great. Like if not, also I don't care. Like, but yeah, I think these sorts of personalized websites or personalized web content will be a big thing with AI. Okay, so the problem with these sorts of fixed taxonomy, like these is that they are fixed, right? Like, so specific info. Okay, what specific info? How to advise? So what? How to advise? Like, what does that mean, right? Like, so that is very not so clear. So seeking information, for instance, the bucket, but it's so broad. It could mean, oh, I'm asking for my health symptoms or celebrity trivia or legal clarification. Like, it could be anything. So what does that mean? So we don't have the control based on that OpenAI taxonomy. And sometimes, the companies also may not want to release this sort of more detailed information because it might reveal something that is not very friendly to them. I'm not saying this is happening, but this might happen. Like, so for instance, if you see that, if you find that 50% of the people are using it for romantic partners or whatever, it's not true. But if it happens, right, like the companies are not incentivized to say that, right, because that looks negatively on them. So it's also important for us to have control over what kinds of topics and the analysis that we do. And what we did is we used an open topic model, an open-ended topic model, unsupervised, to help it discover per country what are the topics. And then so we got around 50 topics per country and then tried to come up with like a cleaner 10 topics across countries. Okay, so this is how they look. I mean, this is a bit too much, like too much information. But if you want to know, like for instance, how are Indians or Pakistanis or Nigerians or Brazilians using these for what are the top topics, so you can really look at these. I mean, there's some things that stand out. Like for instance, health and wellness is always there in the top. 8% of the conversations in India. Finance and banking is 5% of the conversations. Things like that. Like a lot of these are, biased towards the sample being from this gig work kind of data. But it's very interesting already to see this. Like, so in Brazil, for instance, similar. Health and wellness is at the top. There's finance and banking, which is 5.5%. And so on. In Nigeria, it's slightly different. Medical science queries, 5.5%. Well, this includes some sort of coursework related, but also other medical queries. Uh, a lot of people use it for writing. In Pakistan, a lot of it is translation and then coursework, but health and wellness is right up there, around 6% of the queries. Finance and daily tasks is 3.7%. So, there is a lot of like health and wellness and beauty and, all of that kind of stuff. That is very interesting, right? Like, so looking at these sorts of detailed, unsupervised topics will get us this sort of view. So yeah, health and wellness is something that I mentioned, but you also see things like religion and faith, like which is unexpected for me. At least in Nigeria, 5% of the conversations are about religion. In Pakistan, it's around 3%. But still, like if you have hundreds of thousands of conversations in this data set, 3% is like thousands of conversations, right? Like which is quite good. Then there's a lot of translation, which is not what we expected. Like people using, there's Google Translate, but people are using this for translation. And the sample is very online and online crowd work bias. So there's a lot of online earning kind of things. And this sort of self-reflection is a theme that I'll come back to. It's absolute numbers of self-reflection, like we saw, is around 5%, but we'll define it slightly differently, and we see that it's much bigger. Uh, Okay, so then what we did is we tried to combine or like convert these high level themes into something that we can compare. So instead of Urdu, English translation, and or a content creation help being different topics, we try to combine them into a set of 10 themes that are common across all countries, and try to come up with these numbers so you can compare. So for instance, programming tech is super over indexed in India. 21% of our population is talking about Indian population is talking about programming, but only 8% in Brazil. But in Brazil, they use it a lot for content creation, health and medical, and things like that. In India, finance is like 17%. In Nigeria, it's only 3%. So these are the very interesting differences across these different countries. I think there's lots of interesting questions that can be described like based on this sort of pilot data, and then you can go and dig deeper. Like for instance, now we are doing deeper analysis on health related questions. Like, so what are health related queries? What is being asked, what is being responded to, how much of it is correct, wrong, things like that. Uh, and then another next line of analysis that we did after the topics is this sort of is it personal use, is it work related, or is it coursework related? And what we find is that over 50% of the conversations in the data are personal conversations, right? These are conversations that are not work or coursework. Work is around 20%, coursework is around 20%, pooled across all four countries. Per country, there's some variation, but yeah, it's roughly this number. So this kind of indicates that for instance, I mean, Brazil has an older sample, so they have lowest coursework. Pakistan has the highest coursework. So let's look at some examples of coursework and personal and work-related topics. So work is mostly like, yeah, finding a job, programming, front-end development, making money with AI, job search strategies, and so on. AI generation. For personal, it's health and wellness, meaning of words, finance, trading queries, YouTube strategy, and things like that. Okay, so these are examples. If you're interested in other countries, like we have those in the paper. So work and personal conversations specifically is increasing over time, the share of them. Like so here, the pink is personal. You see this sort of share increasing over time for all four countries. Again, like as people realize and know what these tools can do, like these kinds of use cases will emerge and more people use them. Coursework, obviously students who are younger will have adopted them early on, and so now that is changing and personal is increasing. This is very interesting, right? Also, we also see that in our data, coding is not the main use case, it's writing and editing. This is from that dashboard that I showed you earlier, where you can do this sort of cross tab between work, coursework, and personal, and the high level topics. So you can see that um, um, writing plus technical help, writing and technical help, they make up 50% of work conversations. Writing alone is like the single largest work related conversation. So here, we don't necessarily find evidence for the coding assistant kind of framing. That's not how people are using it, at least for a lot of personal conversations are all practical guidance seeking information. But anyway, I mean, you can really go ahead and explore these. So here I will say, okay, work, coursework, personal, and my the BERT topic theme. Let's see, like, okay, this is yeah, and you can say I want to normalized by row. So if you normalize by row, like work is like the main ones are finance and earning, programming, and job and career. For personal, it's mostly content creation, health and medical, finance and earning, and so on. So, there's work related finance and earning, work related or personal related finance and earning. So it could be an interesting qualitative thing to look at these kinds of differences, but there's many, many more. Self-expression is three times more personal conversations than work-related. It's a sanity check and it's kind of passes. Women use ChatGPT much, much more for coursework in three of the countries. So, in Pakistan and India specifically, there's a huge gap between how much men use ChatGPT for and how much women use ChatGPT for. Obvious biases in the data collection, but still, like this is a significant gap. And there might be some interesting hypotheses here that can be tested, again, based on this pilot data, which is that at least in these countries, there's this sort of gender bias and all of that stuff, or there might also be that this is like private tutoring. So this is a huge thing if we can enable and build some sort of tools that make this kind of accessible and provide, for instance, access to children like women, for instance, in these countries, right? Like so you can have programs like that based on data like this. Next, we asked this sort of user intent classification. What are people using ChatGPT for? And is it for asking it to for some information, so seeking information? Is it for doing certain tasks? So things like writing a program, do the analysis or generate an image, or is it expressing, which is for reflection or emotional communication? Things like personal um, personal queries or like mental health related queries and things like that. Uh, And one thing we realize is this is the first time we have a tool, an information seeking tool, where you can have an intention to have to express yourself, right? Like that's AI, but that sets it apart from these other ways that we are used to, which is Google search or YouTube or any other stuff where we are may not have been able to express ourselves, but this is the first time we have this. And one thing we find is that users are increasingly moving more and more towards these sorts of expressing queries. So, for instance, expressing was only 10% in the beginning, but now around 20 to 25% across all countries. You see this sort of increasing trend across all countries. Uh, Asking is relatively stable, like asking is the most common type. Like that's what we've been used to. That's how we are using Google search for a long time. But it's kind of constant. In some countries going down, but it's very interesting, right? Like, so for instance, in India, doing is going down, expressing is going up, asking is constant. In Nigeria, asking is going down, doing is constant, expressing is going up, things like that. Like, so it's very interesting trends that can be studied based on this data. uh, so here, I think the most important thing is this expressing is for the first time we have a tool that can help us do this, and obviously this is a new feature, a new way of using a technology which other information tools could not host. So this adoption will take some time, right? Where people find these use cases where the machine can actually be helpful. But once this happens, like it's already happening in 20% of the queries, once this happens, you will have a lot of issues and implications like personal use, displacement of human support, multilingual safety evaluation, things like that. Like so that we need to be thinking right now, like based on data that is being shown here. So, for instance, one thing we already find is that the majority of the or in terms of expressing queries. So basically what we did here is we looked at the language in which the query is being issued to, and we looked at the fraction of queries for in each language. So uh, the fraction of queries for asking where we're asking the model to do something and asking doing and expressing. And what we find is that uh, conversations in the user's home language, which is the language that is not English, so it's Hindi in India, Portuguese in Brazil, Urdu in Pakistan, and I think Igbo and Hausa in Nigeria. The conversations in those languages are the majority when expressing, right? Like, so when you're expressing, you're more likely to use your own language than English. So this is very important for various reasons. If the model does not work so well in your home language, then you will have problems with expressing yourself and all of that stuff. So this is one important thing. And also, if I'm personally expressing myself and like I am, the model doesn't work so well, or like the model does a different kind of thing and things like that are very interesting. Okay, so that was study one. I actually need to go in 10 minutes. So hopefully I'll quickly go through these next two studies. So study two is about privacy leakage. So what kinds of information, private information, are we leaking to ChatGPT? So this is the context. So ads are now in AI, and especially in ChatGPT. And at the time we collected the data, there were no ads in ChatGPT, but now there are. But one thing we already saw is that people are more and more doing this sort of expressing themselves to the model, right? Like where they're providing a lot of personal information. So we ask here, you're doing a lot of this expressing. How well does the model know you personally? Like things like your demographics and things like that. So how well can it predict your demographics? What kinds of other personal information are you sharing with the model, like, and how does that compare to when compared to YouTube or Google search, right? Like, so do I provide more information to ChatGPT or more of my personal information? And so there are two types of providing information. So one is this sort of explicitly providing, saying, okay, as a single mother, I want this and this, or in the second semester of my undergraduate programming class. So that gives away that you are a student and your age group is a certain thing. As a single mother gives away that you're a mother, like you're probably in your late 20s, 30s, and then you are a woman, right? Like your gender is revealed here. Or there can also be implicit, like so you may not really say it, but you might reveal just based on pizzas close to New York, right? Like maybe it gives away your location and things like that. There's a lot of work in this space on social media where there's people have shown that you people reveal a lot of information on social media. But doing this for this kind of AI and global South context has not been done. Uh, so one thing we find is that people do disclose a lot of personal information, and so for instance, 34.5% of a user's messages contain some sort of personal information. It could be your location, job, earning, a bunch of things I'd show you. And then within the first 14%, that's the median. So over 50% of the people have less than 14% of their conversations by which you can already see the first disclosure. So either revealing your gender, age, location, age group, income, like a bunch of things like that. And this is not something that you do once in your career, in your span of using ChatGPT. People keep doing it over and over. So most of the disclosures are about like job and education, and that's because of the type of data that we have. Like people are looking for jobs in this and things like that. Earnings, lifestyle, habits, location, wealth, salary, religion, physical health, diagnosis, family life, relationships. This categorization we got from some other paper, but a lot of this sort of personal information is revealed. Like so, quarter of the people reveal their job and education, lifestyle and habits for around one fifth of the people, and so on. And this you can, so what we did then is we removed these sorts of explicit mentions. So if you say I'm a mother or that I'm a student, things like that, we removed those sorts of explicit mentions. And then we try to predict based on your conversations, can we predict your gender, your age, your location? And it's really good. Like, even if you remove all of these obvious telltales, you're able to predict your age bracket, which is this 18 to 24, 25 to 34, 35 plus. with whatever 85% F1, like a 0.84 F1, which is much, much better than a simple random prediction. So there's a lot of information that is being revealed here that is not necessarily explicit. Gender is even easier, and then country is also easy. Like so, you're able to get a very, very high accuracy. And we also looked at when the users reveal, we give like, parts of the 5% of the conversation, 10% of the conversation, 15% of the conversation. And for most of the people, just with 5% of the conversation, we're able to predict your gender. So for men, it's like 6.2% of the conversation, you get the gender. For women, it's like around 14%. And for 15%, by 15% of your conversations, you reveal your age. And this is not a memorization attack. It's not like this is because this data is in their training data or something like that. This is a different model trying to predict their demographics. And most of the times it works because of this sort of pre-training knowledge. So we have the traces, the reasoning traces that it used to do this prediction, and we find that this is based on some sort of stereotypes, but it has some sort of intelligent mappings which provide that sort of high level of accuracy. Uh, so this is not something that you can do by asking the LLM to remove your personal information or something like that. This is a defense that is more like stylometric authorship attribution, which is like not based on what you write, but how you write, right? Like, so that is very hard to defend against. So there's an attack like that. It's you cannot just say, okay, remove me from the training data set. There's still like this kind of attack or like inference can happen, and this so which shows that a demographic or like detailed information is very easy for these models to glean from the information that people are providing them, which means that ads will be very effective or could be very effective from these kinds of models. Okay, in the last 5 minutes or so, I'll talk about this comparison between ChatGPT and Google Search and YouTube. Again, like the idea here is to check, firstly, uh, there are three different information seeking platforms. So what we did is we took a smaller sample among the 1,200 users, around 200 or so of those, and then got for the same user the Google search, YouTube search and watch histories, complete data. And we also have other demographics, your religion, caste, education, monthly income, voting preference, things like that. So we did two things. So one is looking at what are people revealing to Google and YouTube, like, and how is it different from ChatGPT? And the second is we are looking at what do people use these different information seeking surfaces for. And again, this has a lot of interesting implications. So the first thing is demographic inference. So what can you infer based on your Google search patterns, YouTube search, YouTube watch? YouTube search and watch are different because you search for different things and you watch different things. So they reveal different information. But so one thing I thought was that ChatGPT will have the highest prediction rate among all these surfaces, but it's not like that. All of them are good enough. So you reveal a lot of information to all these platforms. So for instance, I don't know, gender prediction is really good for across the board, like YouTube search, Google search. You can predict based on your what you information you provide or you search for. Education is similar. Voting preference is somewhat arbitrary, but ChatGPT does decently well, 0.59 F1. Uh, and yeah, so there's some heterogeneity, but the takeaway here is that you're revealing your private information everywhere, and it's not like ChatGPT is the most dangerous. It's yeah, it's everyone. Everything is dangerous. We are all giving our private information to these companies a lot, and so it sits alongside them with a different emphasis. So this sort of profile building way for targeted advertising. It was worked in the past for these other companies, for these other surfaces. It's going to work also for ChatGPT. Then we looked at the topic comparison. What are people using these platforms for in terms of topic consumption? Uh, so we again did some sort of standardized topic modeling for from Google search, from YouTube, from YouTube search and watch, and ChatGPT, put it on the same plane, and then we try to compare this. So ChatGPT is mostly used for this sort of technology and computing, education and learning, for entertainment. Mostly it's YouTube. Like people use YouTube mostly for entertainment. Like I don't know, 65% of YouTube is just entertainment related stuff. For finance and business, around 10%. For health and wellness, ChatGPT is still used a lot. For Google search is very constant, but things like personal lifestyle, it's used a lot. News and society, news and breaking events, and things like that. Like Google search is used a lot. YouTube search also is used a lot. Then we also looked at intent across platforms. Intent is like here, it's much more detailed definition. So we have this very complex three pattern definition: guidance, knowledge, and output. And anyway, so here, like I'll not go into the details of those numbers. There's too many numbers here, but what these show is that there are these sorts of very different distributions for different surfaces. So, for instance, in advice, planning, idea generation, it's almost all ChatGPT. In explaining concepts, mostly ChatGPT and YouTube. But let's say in these sorts of recent sensitive lookups, like it's mostly Google search. In terms of outputs, like if you want an artifact, you use ChatGPT. But if you want to get existing resources, you use Google. Like so, there's very interesting ways in which people are using these for. So the summary is that there is, ChatGPT is being used as not as a replacement for Google search. So we also have other causal evidence that shows this, that, you know, after ChatGPT came in, like the Google search usage did not go up like or go down significantly. So it's not a replacement. There's other studies that also show something directionally like this. But the finding is that ChatGPT is a complement, not a replacement. So people are using it in slightly different ways than you use your Google search or YouTube for. Okay, so to summarize, so there's three main findings that I want to take away. One is this sort of invisible infrastructure angle. So people use it for personal stuff a lot. Like most of the times, people are using it for things like health, education, translation, everyday problem solving, online learning, things like that. It's a personal productivity tool, not just a workplace productivity tool. Workplace usage is only 20% of the conversations. So if we think of and model and like understand ChatGPT as a standard workplace productivity tool, that's not necessarily the right framing, and we are going to miss out like a bunch of a huge portion of the way in which people use ChatGPT are using ChatGPT for. The second is this sort of mix of disclosure and delegation. So we saw this sort of expressive queries being a huge portion of ChatGPT usage, and expressive queries are not just things like you're making a whatever personal relationship with ChatGPT. It's more like, okay, I went to the doctor, I got this information. What do you think? And then following up with that. So it's disclosing that this personal information, expressing itself, but then having it do some other task, right? Like, so a lot of this expressing queries are of that type, which is a new modality. It's a new type in which people are using ChatGPT for, and this is a new way of information seeking, which was not available previously. And the third is this is also a complement to what Google and YouTube and other information seeking surfaces have been used for. And it enables this sort of new class of information seeking and behaviors which don't necessarily replace what Google is doing. So, your quick information search, existing database lookups, things like that. People are still using Google for. ChatGPT is completely, I mean, not completely, it's very, has a different set of distribution of the types of tasks it's being used for. Yeah, thanks a lot. The dashboard is available here. One of the papers is available here. But if you go to my website, you'll have the other papers. If you're interested, just yeah, send me an email and I'd be happy to share the paper. Thanks a lot.